All right, so hello again. In this video, I want to spend some time giving a demo about how we can make web pages more accessible, and in particular, how screen reader systems ends up working with those particular web pages. Accessibility is one of those topics that doesn't get covered in a lot of web classes, which is part of the reason that we actually want to make sure that we spend a lot of time going over it, particularly rarely at the beginning of the course, because it's actually really important. It doesn't take a lot of work, but it's an easy way of making your website be a much better system to be able to support the kinds of things that we really care about here in the iSchool. So what we mean by accessibility is really making sure that your web page is consumable and available and accessible to everybody. So not just people that are running the latest browser or the best computer or, excuse me, on your own particular device, but for people accessing from a wide variety of different kinds of devices. So this is going to be people who may be accessing things from using screen readers, where maybe they are blind, they can't actually see the screen. They may be people who have motor impairments; they're not able to actually like move a mouse effectively or type very effectively. They may be people who are having, even just levels of having people who are colorblind, so they can't see color contrasts in your page. There's lots of different kinds of limitations that people may have that makes it so they're not able to consume your web page and interact with your web page in the same way that you maybe can as you're sort of developing it. And we want you to keep those things in mind as you're actually building these systems in order to make them able to reach a wider audience, or be able to make them be able to support under-supported groups of people, and make them so that they're following legal guidelines. You're required to make web pages accessible. And if you don't, there's actually a fairly decent market for firms that go around suing people, large companies, because their websites aren't accessible. There's a sort of well-known settlement price, and then those get paid, and you fix your site, and everything's great. So you don't want to be there. It's easier just to make our web page accessible to begin with. So really, a lot of the reasons the big reason that I really tend to push on the ideas of accessibility is that we really want to try to drive through the ideas of universal design when we're developing systems at all. The idea of universal design is that if we try to make a system, if we put some effort into making a system accessible to people who have some kind of disability, that'll actually make our website more usable and better designed for everybody at all. So that while rather than necessarily thinking about like, oh, I'm trying to make sure just to help this particular population, which is a really good thing and is what we should be doing anyway, by trying to develop that system, not only are you helping that smaller population, but you're actually helping a large group of other populations you may not even have begun thinking about. The fundamental example of universal design that we always come back to sort of the canonical example, is the idea of curb cuts. These are the sort of the cutouts of the sidewalk where they sort of slopes down into the street. These are included for accessibility reasons, so for people in wheelchairs to be able to cross the street and without having to sort of go up and down a curb. But at the same time, these end up being really, really useful for people who are not just in wheelchairs, but other people as well. People who maybe are blind, so they're not sure where the curb is. This can help them sort of not trip as much. People who may be having difficulties walking, maybe just because they're maybe for whatever reasons, if they have difficulty walking, this makes it easier for them to get up and down the curb. That could be because maybe they've hurt their leg, maybe because they're getting older. It could be because you broke your leg, you're in a cast. It could be because there's lots of really different reasons. This helps people with things like people with strollers. If you're pushing your kid, these are amazing. They help people if you're got a roller bag because you're trying to carry around some luggage and move around like that. People on bicycles like these things a lot better. Really just helps everybody as well. If we can be able to add in some accessibility, can actually help make the page overall work a lot better. Great. So the kind of accessibility that we're going to be really focusing on in this class, there's lots of ways to do web accessibility, but the one that sort of we're going to really be focusing on, sort of what we're going to be sort of most interested in, because in some ways it's one of the largest sets of things we can do and the easiest sets of things we can do, is going to be using, making it so that web pages work well with what are called screen readers. And so the example screen reader where I'm going to show off today is a system called VoiceOver. This is built into OS X, and so I'm going to be sort of demonstrating this on my laptop and showing how this works. If you're using Windows, Windows has a screen reader built in called Narrator, which works in a similar concept. It has a different set of keyboard commands. I don't have a Windows machine to really demonstrate it with, but you can do these same kinds of things as well. Blind users account for maybe 10-15% of the population. They're actually a large group of people that are interacting with web computer systems, and we want to be able to support them. And by developing systems that are going to work well for people who are blind, it's going to also be able to support other systems that also can't see. So things like computer bots, if you want your Google bot to be able to know what's on your web page, to be able to index it better, if you want sort of search engines to be able to work through your system, those are going to, again, work better if you've made your site accessible to people that cannot see. If you're walking around trying to access your website on your phone under a glare, it's going to work better, again, if you manage to design it in those kinds of ways. All right, let me pause this for a second. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to give you a demonstration of how VoiceOver as a system works, so you can get a sense for what it's like to actually be navigating a web page using a screen reader. So I've made a very basic, simple web page that we're going to be able to play around with, and we'll be able to tweak a little bit. It's just got some content, it's got some headings, it's got a picture of an adorably cute puppy thing, and it's got just basically some text we'll be able to have effectively get read to us. So in order to use VoiceOver, it's a utility that's built into macOS. I've put together a cheat sheet. Oh, wait, that didn't load. There we go. I put together a cheat sheet, a reference if you want to be able to try this out on your own, if you happen to have a Mac. I don't have the commands for Windows narrator system, but you can go look them up online. They're not too hard to find. This file, this PDF, is available in the Canvas page under the Files tab. So if you go grab that, you can be able to go find what this looks like. But so I want to give you sort of a quick example of how this works. Sort of throw this over to the side just so you can see it there. All right, I'm doing this inside of Safari because Safari is a little bit more accessible for usage than Chrome. Otherwise, I normally really hate Safari, but it works better with the Mac built-in system. I've had some other issues demoing Chrome to get it all working. All right, let's go ahead and give this a shot. So in order to open VoiceOver, what we're going to do is we're going to hit the keyboard command, because it's all keyboard-based, because remember, if you're blind, you can't move the mouse because you don't know where you're clicking on. So we're going to use the command, actually, I'm going to just move this out of the way so I can see it. That's what we're doing. We're going to use the command, we're going to use the buttons Command F5, and that's going to turn on VoiceOver. So let's go ahead and let's get it running.
VoiceOver on Safari, accessibility demo, window, accessibility demo, web content as keyboard focus. You are currently on web content. To enter the web area, press Control, Option, Shift, down arrow.
So again, when you first open up, it basically, there's actually do a whole welcome to VoiceOver thing, which I've already skipped because I've already set up VoiceOver on my system, but it basically starts reading through where you've currently focused your window on. You can see there's a visual representation if you're not blind, where you can see sort of that it's highlighted that particular web structure. There's also, it's kind of hard to see because it moves on my other monitor, but there's also a little reading thing where it actually tells you what the VoiceOver is currently saying. So again, that you can, if you want to try to see how that works. So once you've sort of selected this option, you then have a couple different commands you can use to basically get to start reading. In general, you're going to hit Control and Option. That's sort of your like VoiceOver command like meta key. Once you've hit Control and Option, you can then hit different arrow keys or letter keys in order to tell it to do different kinds of things. So if we hit Control Option A, it will start reading the text from the current place. So I can hit that. I'm going to hit Control again to be able to stop it. So if I hit Control Option A.
Accessibility demo, web content, heading level 1, my web page. This web page contains some generic content for use in showing off a screen reader. It contains emphasized text as well as visited links to other pages.
All right, I'm going to show you. Actually, I'm going to pull over the caption here. So I'll put over. Yeah, I'll put it right there. Just so you can have a chance to see what it looks like. Because often it's useful to be able to see how it gets read. You can navigate back and forth through sentences by using the arrow keys. So if you use Control, Option, left arrow, right arrow, I can move my way back through the page.
My web page. You are currently on a heading level 1 inside of web content. To exit this web area, press Control, Option, Shift, up arrow.
All right. So if I'm going to ahead and hit Control, Option A until it starts reading.
Heading level 1, my web page.
So you'll notice it says that it's on a heading, and then it starts reading.
It contains emphasized text.
It talks about some content. When it gets to a link, it tells you that it's a link, reads it, and then starts reading all this other text as well.
Heading level 2, an image.
And we can listen to it reading its particular Latin text, and all this stuff kind of comes together. So there's lots of ways you can navigate through this with VoiceOver by using Control, Option, left arrow, right arrow. I also want to note that just in general, this is actually separate from. Thanks, VoiceOver.
To exit this web area, press Control, Option, Shift, up arrow.
If that sounds like it's reading fast, that's actually incredibly slow. Most people who are blind users or screen reader users who actually use this on a regular basis adjust the voice settings and turn the speed up to like 150% or 200 speed of that. So usually it's about twice as fast just to be able to read through and understand all the different pieces of content there. Okay, I do want to note that it's possible to navigate through web pages just by using the keyboard, actually pretty effectively, even if you're not using a screen reader. And this is both useful if like your mouse doesn't work or if you have a really crappy like touchpad laptop thing. In most browsers, good ones, so this doesn't quite work in Safari, but that's why I've got Chrome version opened up. You can generally jump through the different selectable elements like hyperlinks by using the tab key. So if you hit tab, it'll actually jump to say the first link on the page, and if I hit tab again, you'll notice it jumps down to the last link. And if you hit enter, that'll actually go ahead and like select that. It's like you clicking on that link, right? Enter is like the click, and that will let you be able to effectively navigate through your page. So that's sort of a useful way of being able to sort of jump through all the content in your page. If you hit shift tab, it goes backwards, tab, it goes forward. So you can actually use that to navigate through pages pretty quickly by using a keyboard command, and that's the kind of things that screen reader systems will actually end up letting you do. Okay, there's one other piece of navigation things that I want that VoiceOver lets you do that I want to be able to demonstrate. So I'm going to go ahead and turn VoiceOver back on because I turned it off for some switching stuff.
VoiceOver on Safari. Accessibility demo window. Accessibility demo. Web content as keyboard focus. You are currently on web content. To enter the web area, press Control, Option, Shift, down arrow.
Thanks, VoiceOver. So what you can also do that VoiceOver provides, and this is actually a lot of different screen readers provide this kind of functionality, is it provides what VoiceOver calls the web roto. And you can think of it like a roto, like a rotator. It's actually going to give you effectively almost like if you remember sort of old rotary, it basically gives you sort of a list. It basically gives you lists of elements on the page that you can be able to quickly navigate through. So you can open this up by hitting Control Option U. I don't know why it's U, but it's a U.
Links menu.
And then what happens is, and you can't see the picture on what it shows like because it's showing up on a different screen. I can't figure out how to get the window to move. But basically, it's going to open up a menu that has just a list of all the links in there. And so then you can use the up and down arrows to just listen through what all the links are. So if you sort of just listen for a second.
Visited, link, links to other pages, link, find more images.
So it just lets you like quickly jump through all your links. If you then use the left and right arrows, you can actually jump through other kinds of lists of things to go through. So for example, if the right arrow,
headings menu,
we can go to a list of headings on the page, and then I can actually read through all of the headings.
Heading level 1, my web page.
Okay, so there's a first level heading in H1 that's called my web page.
Heading level 2, an image.
There's a second level heading called an image.
Heading level 2, the list.
And there's a second level heading called the list. So by having this nice hierarchy set up of all your heading levels, it actually makes it fairly easy to be able to effectively jump through the table of contents of your page. This is why we want to make sure that we don't skip levels along the way. Like you don't want to jump from an H1 to an H6, because then if someone's going through something like this roto, they're going to be like H1, oh, they jumped to H6, like wait, what happened to H2 and H3? And basically suddenly your table of contents begins all sort of falling apart. There's a couple of other different kinds of areas that we can be able to specify as well, and I'll talk about how to sort of add those in just a second. Great. Let's go back up to
heading level 2, an image.
The image heading, right? That sounds like the kind of place I want to be. And let's go ahead and listen what happens when it starts reading through the image. So I'm going to again hit Control Option A to start it reading, and say keep going.
2, an image.
Nope.
No items in red spots menu.
Oh, sorry, got to get out of the
accessibility demo. Web content. You are currently on web content.
All right.
To enter the web area.
Sorry, I'm not great at screen readers because I don't use this on a regular basis. Okay.
No items in web.
So we're going to go to the headings.
Level 1, my web page. Heading level 2, an image.
There.
Heading level 2, an image. You are currently on a heading level 2 inside of web content. To exit this web area, press Control Option Shift up arrow.
Great. So I got to the heading, right? And you see I just used the roto and listen my way through it to get where we need to go. So now I can start reading through the an image section page.
Heading level 2, an image. D2B1D84444 add 90C FEB1214AF1479.jpg image. Link. Find more images. Heading level 2.
Whoa, okay. So let's go back and let's read that image again.
Link. D2B1D84444 add 90C FEB1214AF1479.jpg image.
Okay, so it tried reading the image, and it said, what is this an image of? And it immediately started reading this random string of, like, numbers and letters with the .jpg at the end. What does that mean? Why does it do it? Let me close down VoiceOver for a second, because otherwise it's going to get real mad at us. If we open up the source code for this page, what you can see is that the image has a source, and it's grabbed off of, it's just a hot linked image, right? So it's just grabbing from HTTPS, but the name of the image file that we're actually running, which you can see sort of right here, is it's just reading the name of the image. D2B1D8FA4A, it just basically read the name of the file. That, of course, makes absolutely no sense. And that doesn't let people who screen readers going to be like, well, what the hell is that an image of? And they don't know what they're talking about. So we can't just change the name of the image. Like I can't put that this is a puppy.jpg because that's no longer going to be a valid link because we're linking to something on the internet. So what we're going to do instead with all of our image elements is we're going to, and let me see if I can actually make it here. I'm going to sort of move this down just so you can sort of see it all fitting on the page. In addition to the source attribute, the other attribute we tend to add to images is going to be what's called an alt attribute. And the alt is going to be the alternate text that we need to have that we need the computer to read if instead of when basically if the screen reader shows up. If we're not able to actually see the image, if a screen reader is reading it, it should read some other text instead. So we might say a cute puppy, a cute tiny puppy, because that's what it is. It's a cute tiny puppy. All right, so we can save that as well. We're going to go back to Chrome. We're going to pop open VoiceOver.
VoiceOver on Safari. Accessibility demo. Window. Accessibility demo. Web content as keyboard focus. Accessibility demo. Web content.
Yeah.
You are currently on web accessibility demo. Web content. Heading level 1. My web page.
Right, this web jump down to the image.
Heading level 2. An image. You are currently on a heading level 2 inside of web content. To exit this web area, press Control Option Shift up arrow.
Great. All right, let's start going.
Heading level 2. An image. D2B1D844.
Hey! Gotta refresh the page.
Heading level 2. An image. You are currently on a heading level 2 inside of web content.
Gotta refresh so it
press Control Option Shift up arrow.
We need to refresh so it loads the actual changes to the page, which I forgot to do. All right, thanks. Good job.
Heading level 2. An image. A cute tiny puppy image. Link.
There, see?
More images.
Better. The thing to note is it says a cute tiny puppy, comma, image. So that's why when we are creating
VoiceOver off.
That's why when we're creating we make alt tags, we don't want to include things like image. We don't want to say image of a cute puppy, because then what the screen reader is going to do is it's going to read image of a cute tiny puppy and image, which becomes really sort of redundant. And because again, we're trying to read so much content, we want to be able to sort of keep it slightly contained. We want to avoid any really horrible redundancies if we can. So in general, all images should be in there, just called a cute tiny puppy. All right, so you notice that I'm trying to jump through, and this lets me jump through in terms of headings, which is one way of being able to sort of organize what our page looks like. The other way we can start organizing what this page looks like for our screen readers is by adding in different section elements. And so we can do that by using a set of HTML tags, elements that basically are used to represent different literal sections of the page. So what we might do is we could, for example, take this H1, which is sort of our title for our page, and we could put this in what we call a excuse me, a header element. And if we put it inside of a header element, maybe just the H1, we'll leave this paragraph outside of it. But that header is going to include things like the title of the page. Header is going to include things like if you've got banner images, if you've got navigation elements, those might all go inside the heading of the page. We can then define the main section of my page, which is going to be the main meta content, which is basically everything that we actually really care about. That's going to be all my main content. And this can all get indented as well. Indenting that. And then we can start breaking this up into different sections. We might say, great, so here's my main content, but my main content has sort of this first introduction section, which is kind of this extra initial text. So we've got that section. That. Then I've got this other section, right? So so again, this is one section of my page. You can think of it as almost like one group of content. Then I've got another section of my page that has the image inside of it. And then I've got another section of my page that's got the list inside of it. And then maybe I've got this other stuff that's not necessarily inside of its own section, but maybe it's inside of its domain. You can also put sections inside of sections. You can actually give sections their own headers and their own footers. Again, it's basically like trying to create a kind of table of content structure. And actually by using these, it's possible to actually automatically generate tables of contents for your page, which is part of what screen readers end up doing. So if we save this content, go back to Safari, reload Safari, so it loads in with that content. Again, these don't have any appearance element, so it doesn't make it look different by putting things inside of a main or a header or a footer or a section, but it lets us be able to sort of organize and add some extra semantic meaning that makes it easier to navigate for non-sighted users. All right, so let's go ahead and let's open up screen
VoiceOver on Safari.
Accessibility demo,
window. Accessibility demo. Web content as keyboard focus.
And if I start opening up the web roto,
headings menu.
There's a headings menu.
No items in red spots. Landmarks menu.
There's a landmarks menu, and the landmarks menu has things like the banner webmark, which is the heading,
Main.
and it has the main section. It doesn't actually have the individual sections as well, though those become sort of more useful.
Links menu. Headings.
But we can basically start using those kinds of things like headers, footers, which end up becoming a footer or content info, and mains to be able to help organize, and again, provide other ways of saying, well, how can I jump past all the heading stuff, like all the banners, all the nav links, all the logos? How can I jump down to the content? Well, having this kind of landmark tags will let you jump down to the content. All right, I want to show you one more set of things that we can do to be able to make pages more accessible. I did a quick edit to the web page. I added in some buttons because I needed some buttons and I'd forgotten to put them in before. So in any case, we now have some buttons. So if we look at our source code, I've added a section. I've got some buttons. So I've got one button, and it's using a button element to create a button, which is something you can click. So I've got one that says click me, and we go to our page. We can hit click me, and it's like a clickable button, and it looks like it does its little thing. The button doesn't do anything yet. We haven't actually hooked up any functionality to it yet. We'll talk about doing that more when we get to JavaScript, which is where we start adding in like the ability for button clicks to do stuff. But in any case, we can create HTML buttons at least. I've also created a button whose content is actually an image. It's a search icon. And you notice it looks like a little search icon. So you can imagine if like you had like a form that had your input bar and you had your then search icon, this is what your button might look like. So again, this is a button. I can click it. It even gives me little animations when I click stuff. And there's lots of other ways you can style buttons as well. There's better approaches you might use to making buttons that you click on anyway. Finally, I have this other thing that says not a real button. And you'll notice that it has a little pointer, so it makes it look like it's clickable. I've used some CSS to modify this, but it's not actually a thing you can click on. Maybe what I would want to do instead is I would want to add in some CSS or use some JavaScript to make it so that when I click on that element, that thing, which you'll notice is actually a span that has a button class as opposed to actually being a button itself. Maybe I'd want to do that because I don't want to actually use the button because buttons include their own styling and I don't want that styling. So I'm going to create this span instead to get that effect. And maybe I'm going to add in some JavaScript so that when I click on that span, right, when I click on it, I want it to do something by maybe like expand the page or navigate or do some other kind of work. Great, so I've got these buttons. What I can then do is that we can then see what happens when VoiceOver ends up doing with these things. So let's turn VoiceOver back on. Welcome back.
VoiceOver on Safari. Accessibility demo window. Click button. Click link. Find more images.
Yep. So let's start going.
Currently on a link. Find more images. Click me. Button. Button. Not a real button. Heading level 2. The list. What heading? Not
all right.
button.
So read it.
Button.
Click me button. Okay. Not bad.
Press Control Option Space. Button. You are currently on a button. To click this button, press Control Option Space.
So you notice that the screen reader just says button because there is no content in the button. There's just an image, and it reads that image and doesn't know quite what to do with that. So if we have this image, we could go ahead and add in an alt element. Maybe like search.
Busy. Safari accessibility demo. Click button.
Right.
Click me.
Oh, sorry. Refresh the page.
Reload. Click me. Button. Click. Search button.
Better, right? Now that we have an alt element that actually supports that thing. However, sometimes you may not want to let's go VoiceOver for a second. You may not actually always want to use an image to do this kind of work. Maybe you've got some other kind of icon. Maybe you've got an SVG element, which is like a vector graphic. Maybe you've gotten some other kind of content in there instead. What you can do instead of trying to add alts to images, if you need to be able to do that kind of, to add some, basically make it so we have some content that maybe just looks like a picture, maybe it has a background image, but it's not actually an image element. The other thing that we can do for this button is rather than giving it this image with an alt, we can instead take our button, especially because this image might change, we can instead take this button and give it what's called an ARIA attribute. ARIA, A-R-I-A, are a set of effectively extra attributes, they're HTML attributes, that are used to add extra accessibility, but they're not part of the main HTML specification. They're basically an extra additional piece we can do. So there's only a couple of ARIA elements that you'll probably end up using regularly in this class. The most common one that you might see is what's called ARIA label. So ARIA label is a little bit like alt, but for everything else. So if you put an ARIA label, it'll tell the screen reader what it should read in place of the thing it would normally say. So we might say that this thing is a search in order to be able to make that do. So we've added in a label for that particular button. And you can do this for all kinds of elements. It's mostly used for things like divs, particularly if you have things like if you have a block, like a div or a paragraph that's just going to have like a card or an image inside of it, but it's not using an image element. You use some CSS to add like a background image, or maybe to make a giant blue thing. If you imagine maybe making like a checkerboard, you want to have like just red and green boxes. You can use ARIA labels to be able to assign descriptions to those things as well. You don't need this most of the time, because if there's actual text there, like click me, great, it's there. You don't need to do anything else, but this is to let you do things when you need to add some text that isn't normally there to be able to be seen. All right, so let's refresh our page. Let's pop VoiceOver back open.
VoiceOver on Safari.
All right.
Accessibility. Vertical split. Vertical
come
splitter.
on.
Collapsed on left.
No, I don't want the
You are
vertical.
escape button. You are currently on a button. To press this button, double tap anywhere on the touch. Hey.
Oh my gosh, now I've lost it.
Vertical splitter. Collapsed on left.
All right. I'm gonna try doing screen VoiceOver. VoiceOver's been giving me a bunch of issues because it does that periodically. Because I'm trying to jump through a bunch of things.
VoiceOver on Safari. Accessibility demo window.
Great.
Accessibility demo. Web content has keyboard focus.
All right.
Accessibility demo. Accessibility.
Yeah,
demo.
I know. Go into the demo. There we go.
Heading level 1. My web page. And the
Damn it.
main. You are currently on a main inside of web content.
All right. Start reading.
Main. This web page contains some
There we
generic.
go.
It can click me button. You
So
are currently.
there's our button.
To click this button, press Control Option Space Search button.
See,
You are
now
currently on a
the
button.
ARIA label
To
gives it
click
the
this
same
button,
kind of effect.
Press Control Option
we're good.
Space. Not a real button.
But
You
then,
are currently on a text.
but then we get to our not a real button, but we want this to be clickable, so we sort of want to be able to have it continue doing that kind of work.
VoiceOver off.
So let me turn off VoiceOver. So the other ARIA thing we'll often do is that for these kind of interactive elements that we want them to be buttons, because we might have things like our web rotor that's going to pull up a bunch of different, like here's all the buttons you can interact with, here's all these pieces we can deal with. The other thing attribute we can add to our span here is we can give it what's called a role. And an ARIA role is basically going to tell it that this is what that element does if it doesn't do its normal thing. So a span normally has no role, it's just a piece of content. But we say we want this span to act like a button, so we can actually give it a role of button. And then from the screen reader's perspective, this thing is a button. Now, given that I have a span and I've styled it like a button and I give it a role of button, life would be better if I had just gone ahead and made the damn thing a button to begin with, but sometimes you may want to be able to do things like if you have a div that you want to be clickable, because you want to sort of look like a button, but you've styled it in your own way, you might give it a particular role, specify what you want to do. You might have noticed that Visual Studio actually autocomplete a lot of this stuff. There's actually quite a few of these roles that you can apply to things. So buttons shows up. Things like banner is a way of specifying a role. It says that this is like my heading, this is like my banner structure, don't ignore this, do other things with it. Content infos are used for like the footer, like where things come from. So there's a lot of different these kinds of roles, what are called ARIA roles that you can specify for how your page is going to look. And I will encourage you to sort of look into those in more detail, see how you want to do them. But in general, it's the kinds of things that we're going to be looking for to make things accessible are we want our images to have alt attributes, right? Like our image up here. We want our images to have alt attributes. We want to use ARIA labels and ARIA roles when appropriate. Again, you don't need them all the time. They're only if you're trying to take something that's not normal HTML and make it, and basically trying to take an element and use it in a way that's not what it normally does, right? That doesn't match the actual semantic meaning. So you don't need to do it a lot, but you can do it a little bit, and it's going to make sure that there's no accessibility problems throughout your page. Great. That's the general main idea of how this accessibility stuff works. Okay, so the last thing I want to do in this video, just because it's kind of a fun thing to deal with, make sure recording is working, is I want to try to show what it's like to navigate a screen when you're not actually looking at the screen. So I want to sort of give you a sense of what this experience might be like. It's a little bit easier if you actually want to control your things on your own, but given that we can't quite do that because we're not actually in a lab setting, I'm going to try to sort of give you like sort of at least an audio, I guess, walkthrough. So what I've done is I've got on a window that you cannot see as I've opened up the Canvas page for the course website. And I want to open it up in Screen Reader, and we're going to basically see if we can go through and sort of mentally, like sort of walk through the process of how we might try to read through that screen reader, trying to figure out, maybe say, when the first assignment is due on this page. And we'll sort of see how far we get in the next, I don't know, 5 or 10 minutes, and then we'll sort of call it a day. Whatever, I'm going to call it a day. All right, so I've got Chrome. I'm going to open up VoiceOver.
VoiceOver on Safari. Info 340 degrees Celsius SP20. Client-side development window. Info 340 degrees Celsius SP20. Client-side development. Web content has keyboard focus. You are currently on web content. To enter the web area, press Control Option Shift down arrow.
Here, I'll pull the caption down there so you can go see what happens. So things are noted. Info 340 degrees Celsius, because I've got info 340C and it reads C as degrees Celsius, which is great. There's probably ways we could try to fix that in Canvas if we had more time to do that. Okay, so we're in this web roto. We're in this giant website. We have no idea what it looks like. Often a good place to go is we might pull up our roto to see like what kinds of features and navigation we have available to us.
Landmarks menu.
Okay, landmarks menu. So there's things we've got.
Banner. Global navigation region.
Oh, that seems like that might be useful for getting to our region to figure out where we need to go, right?
Landmarks banner. Global navigation region.
All right, let's go to our global navigation region. Okay, and let's start reading that.
Global navigation region. Link. Dashboard. Link. Login. Link. Dashboard. Link. Calendar. Link. Inbox. Help button. Minimize global navigation button. Hide courses navigation menu button. Breadcrumbs navigation. Visited link. Info 340 degrees Celsius. Spring 2020. Courses navigation menu navigation. Current page visited link. Home. Link. Syllables. Visited link. Assignments. Link.
Oh, visited link assignments. Oh, link sounded great. So maybe what we should have done is we should have actually just pulled up a link and gone looking for a link called assignments rather than trying to find the global navigation. Because if you think about the global navigation, and if you've looked at what a Canvas page looks like, the global navigation is actually going to be like the sort of that sidebar that has all the different content we're interested in. So in that case, maybe that wasn't the greatest thing to do. But in any case, it looks like we found a link to assignments. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to back up one.
Visited link. Assignments.
So I'm up to visit link assignments.
You are currently on a link. To click this link, press Control Option Space.
Great. I'm going to hit Control Option Space, and we're going to click that link. We'll follow the link to assignments.
Press visited link. Assignments. Link. Skip to content. Global navigation region.
Did you hear that? So let me go back once.
Global navigation. Link. Skip to content.
Let's go skip to content. It's not content, it's content. This is what's known as a skip link. This is actually going to be, this is a great thing. It's great that Canvas includes this, but this is the idea is that there's so much navigation there that I don't want to have to listen to all the navigation being read to me every time. I like to sort of just jump to the content of the page directly. So this is what a thing that's actually a link that you can't see. There's a bunch of CSS that's used to hide it. Unless you start tabbing through it, then you can actually see it visually. That basically is just a link that lets you jump past all the navigation and all the heading stuff to get to the main section of your page. It's sort of a useful tool that's provided for some screen readers. In general, you can get the same effect by using something like the Web Roto to just jump to the main section directly, but this is sort of a useful tool we can use. Great. Let's open up a Roto. Let's see what else we can find.
Menu. No items at links menu.
Okay, links menu. That seems okay.
Headings menu.
Headings menu.
Heading level 1. Assignments.
Okay, that might be useful.
Heading level 2. Upcoming assignments. Toggle assignment visibility. Expanded button.
Well, I don't want to use a button to do that.
Heading level 2. Undated assignments. Toggle assignment visibility. Expanded button.
Sounds like there's a button this heading is a button itself, which feels a little bit weird, but I guess we'll go with it.
Heading level 3 items.
Let's go to the heading 1 assignments. That sounds most reasonable.
Heading level 1 assignments. You are currently on a heading level 1.
Okay, well maybe we start reading from there.
Heading level 1 assignments. Warning. For improved accessibility of reordering assignments and groups, please use the Move to Dialog option found in the menu. Search for assignment.
That was kind of cool. Have you ever
search for warning for improved access.
So you can sort of see what this caption is. This is a code you've probably never actually seen in Canvas because it's written using, again, these kinds of things where it's hidden in the CSS makes it hidden so that sighted users can't see it, but it's actually built in there for things like screen readers so they can be able to say like, oh, if I'm going to try to do some of this, if I want to use Canvas without actually looking at the screen, there's some notes about how I can try to effectively try to improve my accessibility and how the sort of other options I can use to try to do things like reordering assignments. All right, that's cool. Discover new things.
Warning. For improved accessibility of reordering assignments and groups, search for assignment. You are currently on a text element. Search for assignment. Search for assignment. Search text field. Show by group. Show by date. Selected radio button. 1 of 2. Show by date. Show by type. Radio button. 2 of 2. Show by type. Heading level 2. Upcoming assignments. Toggle assignment visibility. Expanded button. Assignment. Link. Problem set 01. Due. April 3rd at 11:59 p.m. 5 points possible. Assignment. Link.
Stop. Great. There it was, right?
Due. Link. Problem set 01.
So there's problem set 1, which is our first assignment.
Due. You are currently on a text element. April 3rd at 11:59 p.m.
And it tells us when to do. So again, we can sort of find the information we need, but you have to sort of listen to a bunch of different content to get ourselves along the way. So So I've done exercise with this before where I say like try to take the iSchool homepage and navigate it for a bunch of information. It's very easy to get lost when you've got all this different content to go through. Canvas is pretty accessible in general, and we do our very best to make that all get supported. But it's usually worth having some experience, at least sort of thinking through what is it like to listen to a web page. And the reason I want people to have spend some time listening to a web page is so that you can think about that this is actually really hard and it takes a lot of effort. So if we can put a tiny bit of effort, like make sure that our images include alt tags and make sure that we've gotten our headings correct and make sure we've gotten sort of just like enough organization piece there so that people who are already struggling to just navigate the web at all, that they're not made, their situation isn't made worse by the fact they're using our web page. So accessibility doesn't take a lot of work. It's very low-hanging fruit. It's easy to add in a little bit of pieces to, but we really want to make sure that you're doing that work in this class. And I think that's the main demo that I want to sort of show off for how to use a screen reader. I want to give you a sense for what we mean when we say a screen reader and like what that experience actually feels like. I really encourage you to try it out, to play around with this and actually just try listening to some like web pages and some content just to get a sense for like what the hell is going on with this kind of thing. And then once you do that, you'll be able to follow the instructions in the course text about how to like add in some very simple accessibility features in your page. You'll be able to make it so it's hitting the basics. And again, there's a very easy, simple set of things to do. Just you got things you got to make sure you're doing. You want to think through from day 2 of the course, not doing it as sort of an add-on at the very end of the class. Great. And of course, as always, if there's any questions, please let me know. And I'm happy to sort of talk about this in much more detail.